we'll get started. Hello, everyone. Thanks for joining today's live event, Microsoft and Modern Requirements Accomplish More Together. My name is Rosie. I am your host for today. Our speakers, Anand, Microsoft's Senior Azure Cloud Solutions Specialist, will kick off today's event with a brief introduction, then followed by Bob, who will give you an overview of modern requirements. Then we'll pass it over to Asif, who will provide a demo of modern requirements, showing you why modern requirements for DevOps and Azure DevOps are truly better together. Before we begin, just a few housekeeping items. If you have joined us in the past, you know the drill. We always send out the recording of our events right afterwards. So if you're unable to stay for the full hour or just want to share with your team, we'll have the recording in your inbox by the end of the week. It will also be available on our website, along with all of our other webinars and virtual event recordings. We have allocated some time at the end of the presentations for Q&A, so feel free to drop your questions in the Q&A window at any time. We will address these at the end. If we run out of time and we couldn't get to your questions, or additional questions might pop up at the end of the event, you can always shoot us an email at info@modernrequirements.com. We will get you the answers as soon as possible. I see a lot of new participants who are not a current customer of Modern Requirements. Well, you can visit the link on the screen, and I will paste the link in the Q&A window as well, so that you can get your 30-day free trial of Modern Requirements at no cost or obligation. It's a great way to try it out, see if it's the right fit for your team. Throughout this webinar, you will get a sense of many features, capabilities of Modern Requirements for DevOps. So if that has piqued your interest, please visit the link and start your free trial right away. So without further ado, I would like to welcome Anand to kick off the event. Anand, all yours.
Thanks, Rosie. Hello, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending on wherever you are joining from. So I just want to take a few minutes to thank Asif Sharif and Bob Savelson for organizing this wonderful session today on requirement management DevOps tool for Azure DevOps Service and Server. Modern Requirement is our gold certified partner of Microsoft for all things related to requirement management for a long time. They are focused on offering all essential and must-have requirement planning management capability on Azure DevOps Server, as well as Azure DevOps Service Platform. I believe their tool has done a great job to fix all the gaps and introducing some really awesome advanced feature one should expect on Microsoft Azure DevOps Service or Server. And I think we are going to see some of the features in the session. So I will highly recommend all of you to try this tool in your dev test environment and see for yourself how it enhances your productivity and help in requirement management and other project management tasks. So without further ado, I will hand it over to Rosie and Bob. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, Anand. This is Bob. And this webinar first got its roots in targeting the needs of US, local, and state government. However, we do have quite a diverse audience today, and my initial remarks, while focused on the needs of government, certainly have relevance to the private sector as well, and the demonstration will be applicable to a wide audience. So let me get started. Today, both in government and in the private sector, more than ever before in our history, the world is rapidly changing. Any of the topics on this slide could be the subject for its own webinar series, not to mention climate change and the awful situation in the Ukraine that are also impacting the way we do business. What is constant, however, is disruption in both our work and our personal lives. For example, everyone is shopping online today, and e-commerce rose by 30% in 2020. Remote work has become the norm, and Microsoft experienced 200 million individual users in Teams in a single day, which is enormous, just reflecting how everybody is working from home. Few people are standing still, and how we adapt to these changes is vital. About a year ago, Deloitte published an article on the future of government domains, clearly showing the reinvention of the 5 main government domains that are ubiquitous across many levels of government. Many of these changes are supported by new and existing technology like AI, blockchain, and DevOps. As organizations respond to the global and local factors that are changing how they conduct business, leaders are really relying on technology to help them adapt. And we have all learned through the past couple of years that staying the same is not an option. Information technology is a driver, a catalyst, an enabler of positive change. For example, IDC, a leading IT research firm, published research that said that the Internet of Things spending will surpass $1 trillion next year. Today, 5 billion people in the world have a mobile device, saying that almost everyone is connected. This is truly a digital revolution where process, business model, cultural, and domain transformation are occurring in many organizations. And government organizations who have really been designed to resist change are now changing incrementally. Technology information, though, does bring its challenges. Ubiquity of data, cybercrime, disinformation, and overall scalability create new risks as governments develop new products and services. As teams are tasked with adapting collectively, there are some great success stories like Microsoft Teams, and some are not as successful. For example, all of the supply chain issues that we are facing today, and I'm sure everyone has personal stories, but I was horrified to hear that the vehicle that I wanted to buy would take 4 years to deliver to me last month. So we are all experiencing issues, and as teams are tasked of bringing new or re-engineered product and services to market at unprecedented speed, they encounter several obstacles with their systems used to define these products and services. Many agencies today in the government use Microsoft Office tools to define requirements, and some have adopted Azure DevOps to develop, build, and release their products. However, few have created the high-performance factory to keep pace with market demands. The inefficiencies shown on this slide are the most commonly reported issues that we hear from our clients. The existence of these lead to delayed services or product releases, or products that completely miss the mark. On the good news side, what we are going to present today addresses each of these issues individually, and we will show you how. Microsoft and Modern Requirements together really do provide a complete solution for bringing your products and services to market quickly, with high quality, and with auditability. Azure DevOps is an industry-leading tool for application development, builds, and releases. But it does provide some opportunities in the area of requirements, as noted by Gartner and others. Modern Requirements is purposely built as an extension to fill all of these gaps. The tool itself can be used on-premise or in the cloud. It uses Azure DevOps as the database, and in turn, Azure DevOps integrates with GitHub for those that like GitHub. It is embedded into the user interface of Azure DevOps, offering familiarity and extended functionality. It supports single sign-in to Azure DevOps, inherits whatever process template that you are using in Azure DevOps, and leverages the Teams and Excel bidirectional interfaces supported by Azure DevOps. Our clients have proudly reported the savings on this infographic to us. These are real savings based on automation, improved collaboration, and the addition of visualization to complement simply textual requirements. The tool provides many layers of functionality, with projects and permissions being set up in Azure DevOps itself. And then there are many layers of functionality that our clients choose to implement as their needs dictate. The most popular requests that we get from clients are smart reporting, trace analysis, and the word-like authoring that is provided in SmartDocs. One of the foundational principles in requirements management is what taxonomy you will use to define or manage the work and collaborate upstream and downstream with your stakeholders and team members. From agile to waterfall to product development, our tool supports any out-of-the-box process template offered in Azure DevOps or a highly customized one. And it's really easy to configure these process templates in Azure DevOps. Because the tool is wide and deep in the capabilities it provides, it offers points of value to a wide range of users and stakeholders within your enterprise. And finally, I'd like to share with you the results of a survey that was done independently by Software Reviews last year. Modern Requirements and all the other major requirements tool vendors participated, and Modern Requirements was awarded the gold medal as the highest ranked pure requirements tool. We were awarded a 97% emotional footprint, and our company was rated well above industry averages in terms of vendor capabilities, like product support, and well above industry averages in product features, like ALM integration. So we're very excited about how our clients view our product and the people that they deal with in our company, and hopefully you can experience the same soon. So at this point, I would again encourage you to enter your questions online, and we'll allocate some time at the end to answer them. and I will end my presentation and hand it over to Asif for the demonstration.
All right, thank you, Bob. And hello, folks. I'm going to give you a demonstration of modern requirements, and later on we'll take Q&A and answer specific questions. So my objective here is to give you a broad understanding of modern requirements. So modern requirements is built into Azure DevOps. So the UI is embedded from Smart Docs to reporting are all part of modern requirements. Can you guys see my screen?
No, can you share again?
Oh, I see. All right, shall do that again. Let me know when you see it.
Yep, all good.
All right, thank you. All right, folks, so I was saying modern requirements is built into and for Azure DevOps. So everything you see here from Smart Docs to reporting is part of modern requirements. In addition to that, within the context menu, all the items in blue here are part of modern requirements. We also inherit the process template from Azure DevOps. So whether you're using an out-of-the-box process template or a fully customized one, modern requirements will simply inherit that process template. We also inherit security from Azure DevOps, so you get a single sign-on experience. And perhaps most importantly, we use Azure DevOps as our data repository. So any information you create from modern requirements will in turn create information in Azure DevOps. So which means that Azure DevOps will be your system of record. You'll have one centralized system of record, everything stored directly within Azure DevOps. And that is true whether you're using Azure DevOps on the cloud as a service or you deploy it on-prem. So to begin with, I'm going to show you how you can create reports from your work items. So within the backlog and the query view, when you go to your context menu, you can invoke Smart Report from here. And using Smart Report, you can choose the template you want to work with and generate your document. Now, there are various document templates we provide by default. So for example, if I wanted to generate a document based on a table format, you'd use that template. But more importantly, you can define your own templates. So you can define what information you want in your report, for which work item, what properties, what style, what layout, what formatting. You can define all of those. And once you define it, you can reuse your templates across different projects. And then based on that, when you generate the document, you will get the appropriate output. So you can see I've added some properties in a table format before the description field. So you can configure what information you want to extract. And then finally, you can save it to Word or PDF. And when you do export it, you can choose your own Word template so that you can have your headers, your footers, your cover page, and all the wordsy things directly within the Word template that would get used. Now, from a Smart Report perspective, you can also generate a Smart Report on your test plans. So here I'm showing how a test plan has a test suite, has various test cases, and then it's showing information on the test run. And this particular test case that ran failed. And then at the step level also, you can see what passed and failed. And then if there's any linked bugs for it, you can also extract the bug in your reports. So this was configured something like this: test plan, test suite, test case, test run, test results at the test case level, the step level, and the related bugs to the test results. And by the way, this report is invoked from the test plan hub, where you can go and call upon Smart Report. So Smart Report can be used to generate reports based on work items or the test run data or the test plan data. Now you see, when people create requirements, typically, or create work items, they'll typically use the backlog view, or they'll go here and create a new work item of whatever type that's appropriate. The backlog is allowing you to create a hierarchy of parent-child relationship between work items as a one-to-many relationship. So if you wanted to add a test case here or a related risk in there, this is not the place to do it. Or if you want to see the details of a work item, you would have to open it up and see the details. And then click something else and see the details. There's no place to group things other than simple hierarchies, nor is there a way to add an introduction or overview or add diagrams to it. So to solve all of these problems and others, we built SmartDocs. SmartDoc is a bridge between document and work item management. It gives you the best of both worlds. So as you look at this SmartDoc, there's an introduction, there's a reference section, there's overview, there is scope statement, there's a diagram in it, and then you have your epics, features, and user stories. And you also have test cases. In fact, these two test cases not only satisfy this user story, but also the same two test cases satisfy another user story. So you can have the same test case appear multiple times in the same document. So if you look at the outline of the document, you will see that we have a document to the root, sections for things like introduction, a diagram, then epic, feature, stories, and test cases. So that's the way I've configured this document to be. Now, when you're authoring a SmartDoc, you can create new information directly from within the SmartDoc, or you can insert existing work items by running a query or doing a search and pulling those work items with a drag and drop into the SmartDoc. A SmartDoc is built on a template. So the template of this particular SmartDoc is structured in a way where if you were to look at this template, for example, this shows that the root I want document, then I have sections, epic, features, stories, test cases. So that's a structure we saw in the SmartDoc. So once you define the template, model requirements, SmartDocs will enforce that structure for you. Now you can have the structure of a SmartDoc very flexible or well-defined. That's really up to you. In this template, I'm actually saying that the root of the document should be a document work item, that it should use parent-child relationship or related alternatively. If parent-child is taken, then I'll use the related link type. It is also saying that when I show user stories, I want you to show a description and acceptance in addition to the default title. And then I can have test cases, but the test case should use the tested by link type, not the parent-child or the related link types we defined earlier. So this is very specifically identifying the link types to be used. So now you can imagine you can just focus on creating information and reusing it and not have to worry about what types of links should I create or what information should go at which place within the document. Most of our clients will create 5 or 10 of these smart docs for different document types. And then most of the users of the system will simply use those templates. Most people don't need to learn how to create these templates, and nor do you want everybody to create their own templates. And you can control through rights management who's going to create. Of course, you could give it to everyone, but you can control who gets access to managing the templates. So ultimately, your document ends up looking like that. And when you create a work item in here, then that particular work item, so if you create a user story, that user story will show up in a backlog because we are literally creating a user story work item, although you're creating it from within a smart doc. At any point, you can also export this to Word or PDF by just clicking these icons. You can version your documents. So you can take a look at, let's open up version 2 and see what V2 looks like. And then you can compare version 2 to the current version. You'll see a red line view. The red line view obviously becomes extremely useful to understand what was added, changed, or removed. Whereas in the history, you just see at the macro level what changed. It doesn't specify the exact words. So you can see I removed document for reuse to the word specification. And you can even export this to Word and PDF along with the redlining. And by the way, you can compare any 2 versions of a smart doc. So it's, yeah, you can pick any 2 versions and compare them. Within a smart doc, you can also create diagrams. So creating diagrams within modern requirements is like having Visio directly in Word. So here is an activity diagram. And so basically what you do is you basically drag and drop these things and you do the needful, right? So it's really a simple drag and drop like you would do with Visio. And then you can color things and you can format things and so on and so forth. Okay. But it's more than a tool for creating diagrams. You can create work items based on your activities or the shapes in the diagram. So against this activity, I have a user story, or I can go create another user story that will be linked to that shape, or I can link an existing work item against it. Similarly, I can do that at the macro level, at the overall diagram level. I can create new work items or link existing ones, or you can even do it at the link level. In some cases, rarely, but there are cases where against links, you need to be able to create the work items because the link implies some requirement. So now we are using the diagram as a trampoline to identify our requirements, our risks, whatever the case may be. In fact, if you click on this little icon, this will color code everything that is actually has a work item linked to it. So there is a work item linked to that connection. And so everything that is not colored is an opportunity to identify requirements against those. You can also go to the analysis tab and the system will detect different scenarios. Of course, if each of the steps worked independently, but it did not work in concert, then it would not be very useful. So it is important to have the flows documented. And this tool allows you to basically or to detect the scenarios, all you have to do is to click publish. For those of you who don't want to publish these scenarios individually, and by the way, the scenarios would look like this as work items. So you'll see the narrative in the selected, the highlighted flow, and then the image and the requirements that are covered by the flow would be linked to it as well. Now, for those of you who do not want to create this individually, but rather would capture all the scenarios in a single use case, then you will go to the use case area and define your scenarios, and you can name your scenarios. But when you publish it, you end up with a use case artifact with all the scenarios in it and all the requirements that are covered by that user story. And finally, it will help you detect different test cases. So if you look at this test case, the user has failed login and then it succeeds. And when you publish this, the test cases are created with the test steps, the requirements, the test coverage gets linked to it, and a visual that shows the thinking behind it. So what often happens is that people create their requirements in one place. Somebody may or may not, well, somebody may create a diagram, somebody will create your requirements. You may or may not create scenarios. Or somebody may create it and somebody else will write test cases and so on. So it's done in a fragmented manner. Now what you can do is to build a good diagram and then use the diagram to identify your requirements and identify your scenarios and create your test cases. So now we have a process which is much more efficient in creating all of these artifacts directly within Azure DevOps in a much more efficient and high quality manner. So if you create requirements, or in fact, depending on the process template you use, so some of our clients build instruments, others do risk hazard management, and so whether you're doing that or even when if you want to use smart docs for your detailed design, high-level design documents, you will end up using smart docs as your primary tool for authoring and versioning and managing those artifacts. But the best point again is that all of these work items, when you create it, they are first-class citizen. You can query on that. You can see it in your backlog. You can put it into your sprint planning and so on and so forth. So with that, we'll transition to review management. So let's say we've built a smart document and I want to get some feedback on it. Or in some cases, you might want even a sign off based on the project you're working on. So you would initiate a review. When you initiate a review, you basically give the reviewer a name. My review for BRD 101. You provide some instructions. You invite reviewers and approvers. A reviewer can provide comments only. Approver can, in addition, approve and reject the work items or the document. You can choose a due date. You can approve. You can request that the document be approved as a whole, i.e. everything or nothing scenario, or alternatively, you can have it unchecked. Now users can approve each section and each work item in the document individually. You can even request for e-signature. We have many clients in various industries where it is important, it's very important to get e-signatures because either FDA requires it or some other SOP and standards that they follow require a much more regimented approval process. So we support e-signature as well. And you can do state transition on approval of the requirements of the document. So you'll send out an email to people. People will click on this hyperlink to initiate the review. Now, it should be noted that the reviewers and the approvers do not require a paid license. They can use the free stakeholder license to do the approval. So now what we can do is they come here, they like it, they approve it, they come here, they want to see some changes, they reject it, they come here, they may add a comment. Now it should be noted that review management is a team sport. And what that means is that when you create a review, the review, when you provide comments or approvals, other people who are part of the review, who's part of the team to review that artifact, can see your comments and comment on your comments. So the idea is to provide a transparent system for the group of people that are reviewing a certain artifact to collaborate and to come up with ideas and ultimately get feedback or approval on things. You can also generate audit reports. You can look at the progress being made. You can change the due date. You can update it. So if somebody's on vacation, you can remove them and add other people. You can cancel it, close it. You can send a reminder explicitly. And the reminder is also automated. So folks, let's look at trace analysis. Of course, as we create information, we want to understand how do things come together. And in understanding how things come together, we want to have the we want to have visualize how work items are being put together. And in visualizing how things are being put together, there are two types of trace matrices you can produce. One is called the horizontal matrix and the other is called the intersection matrix. This is the horizontal matrix. In the horizontal matrix, you can see in this case how epics are broken up into features, which user stories are under a given feature, what are the test cases linked to the user stories, and what are the bugs that are linked to the test cases. This then can be exported to a smart report, or you can export this to Excel in a WYSIWYG manner. Similarly, you can actually also generate a traceability matrix on your test plan. Of course, as you know, that things like test run are not work items. So we have created a special way of handling that, where you can actually produce a report, in this case, showing test plan to test suite to test case, from test case to test run, and then the result of a single test case run, and then at the step level, what happened. Okay. And again, you can save this to Excel or generate a smart report from it. So just like smart report, traceability can be done with work items as well as test artifacts. And the way you configure this is through the editor tab. Here you define the scope of your of the work items that should be considered for this trace matrix. And then you can define up to 10 levels of work items In this case, from epic to features to stories to test case to bugs, but we can add 5 more. You can also specify that you can go from stories to test cases, but only follow these 2 link types. You may also specify the properties you want to include in your trace matrix. You may also use the more advanced versions of this traceability matrix, which will allow you to do cross-project traceability in addition to other finer controls. The other type of trace matrix you have is called the intersection matrix. In the intersection matrix, you give it 2 dimensions. I've selected user stories versus test cases. It's showing that the first user story has 5 test cases. The third test case has 6 user stories linked to it. Everywhere you see an arrow means this test case is linked to that user story. In this view, you can also make links. And you can break links. So not only is this tool really good for visualization, looking at test coverage, looking at how many risks have mitigations or what are the requirements bugs or test case bugs. You can configure these very easily and then export this to Excel. Or you might even want to go and say, show me only things that have no links. So why don't these user stories have test cases, and why do these test cases exist when they are not related to any test, to any requirement? So they should be investigated. And now you can export this to Excel and share it with the stakeholders, or they can come directly in here and open up the work items and so on and so forth. And this is configured in a similar way. You give it the 2 dimensions, you choose the link types, you define the scope, or you choose the more advanced version of it. But it's very easy to create these trace matrices, and you'll find that if you think a little about the different types of trace matrices that could provide different types of analytics and give you the ability to do analysis, you may come up with 5 or 6 different styles and just create them real quickly. And at any time you can see, bring up the trace matrix and process it. Yeah. So that's about trace matrices. You can also baseline your work items. So if you remember, I showed how you can create a version of a smart dog. So a baseline is similar to a version of a smart dog, but this spans work items that are in multiple smart dogs, or even work items that are not in smart dogs. So you can take a snapshot in time of all or some subset of work items from your project or your team and add it to a baseline. Baselines can also be backdated. So say you forgot to make a baseline on the first of the year, you can say, hey, model requirements, go back in time and take a snapshot and make that available as though I had created a baseline back then. So it actually will identify how things were back then and create a baseline for you. You can also generate smart report from a baseline. This becomes a historical report. You can compare a baseline and see the delta between a baseline and the current version here. You can even look at the details of exactly what changed in here. So some content changed, links changed, whatever. You can also generate a difference report. So generally, a difference report between 2 different baselines would be the raw material for your release notes. So that's the delta between 2 different releases, what's added, what's removed, what's changed, and so on. And you can also, what many of our clients do is, although through the backlog, you can multi-select work item and reuse it. You can copy it to multiple places using model requirements, but you can also create a library of reusable assets. And then point to your library and pick some specification consisting of various work items and pull it into your project. And so the whole idea being that if you're finding that there are various requirements and components or subsystems that are common, created ones, put it into the library and let other people build on it as opposed to reinventing it. And by the way, in your library, not only can you put in your requirements and risk and mitigation, but also test cases and user stories. And finally, FAQ. FAQ is a requirements elicitation tool. So if you're defining requirements on access security, here are 155 questions that you can answer. And in answering it, you will create a requirement or non-functional requirement or a user story or whatever you so choose. So it's really an elicitation tool to identify requirements. What we have done is we have cataloged questions for GDPR in terms of data security, consent, system lifecycle, quality management, risk management, ASPICE, operational non-functionals, revision and transitional non-functionals. There are over 3,500 questions that are cataloged in various topics that you can use for requirements elicitation. But more importantly, what many of our clients will do is they'll create a blank template, add their own questions to it, and save it as a template. So in this way, someone else can build on your knowledge tomorrow. So it's a simple tool, but very helpful, we are told. So folks, that is that's a quick overview of model requirements. And we have got various clients, both in government and in private sector, in not-for-profit sector, in all kinds of sectors that use Azure DevOps, but they complete Azure DevOps with model requirements because we fill in the important gap of requirements management, of compliance management, on reporting, and a few other areas. So with that, I'm going to take a pause and we can look at the questions. And Bob, over to you.
Thanks, Austin. So there are a couple of questions right away that we can talk about, and that's in the review module. There's a number of questions about review actions and who can perform those actions.
Yeah, that unfortunately will take a little bit more time than we have on this call to determine who can perform what functions. There really are two primary roles. One is the review initiator, and the other is the reviewer. Actually, there are three. There's an initiator, a reviewer, and approver. And so if you're an approver, like I am in this case, I can go and approve and reject things and add comments. If I am a reviewer, all I can do is to provide feedback, and that can be managed. In the event that I am if I submit an approval, then the initiator can go and actually accept what I've approved, of course, they would accept it, I suppose. But if I reject it, then I can say, no, I don't think it should be rejected, and here's why. So the initiator can in turn do these things. So those are the three primary roles: initiators, approvers, and reviewers, and they can do various things.
Okay, thank you. The next question, is it possible to import old requirements from other tools, for example, Doors? I'll take that one. The answer is yes. There's a few ways that you can import content from Doors. We worked with several clients to migrate their content in a high fidelity manner using a migration bridge from our partner OpsHub. And that is really a professional services engagement with us to use the bridge to map all of the entities and the various modules of Doors to Azure DevOps and then bring the content over. So that is one way. A second way is we do support the RecIF standard in modern requirements, and it was developed by IBM, so it's supported in Doors. And you can export from Doors and import using RecIF. The third way, and certainly a low fidelity way, is to use Excel. With Excel, you lose a lot of fidelity and images, attachments, links, and so forth. So I would recommend the first approach with the sync bridge. And if you reach out to us, we're happy to talk to you about what that looks like and how to go about achieving a cost for that. The next question is, can you do screen mockups? And the answer is yes. Asif, can you show the simulation module with screen mockups for a moment, please?
Yeah. So you can create wireframe screen mockups where you can create screens, and in this case, I'm using a tab control and various HTML and JavaScript controls to create mockups. And then I can link one page to other page, so I can navigate between pages. Pages can be simple or more complex. You can even take a screenshot and hotspot things and overlay different controls on it. You can create requirements against the page or the controls on it, and so on and so forth.
Okay, thank you. Next question is, in a review, is it possible to send only parts of the document to the review?
So what you would have to do for that, so within a Smart Doc, you have to send the whole of Smart Doc. But let's say you've got requirements in a Smart Doc or in your project that can be broken up into, say, security requirements, compliance requirements, functional requirements on other areas. What you could do is you could create a query. And based on the query, select multiple requirements and initiate a review from the work items in a query. So that's how you would do if you want to send multiple reviews to different people, but not the whole Smart Doc. But if you initiate it from a Smart Doc, then the document is getting approved.
Thank you, Asif. Here's another question regarding our traceability matrix, and how can I make more readable, bigger traceability matrix work items?
Yeah, that's a tough one. That's a tough one because the problem with any trace matrix is that in a trace matrix, whether you're looking at the horizontal matrix or you're looking at the intersection matrix, the more data you have. So suppose you've got 500 user stories and 1,000 test cases. Well, it's going to be big. It's just a big data set. In the horizontal matrix, again, the same thing. If you have a lot of content, the trace matrix is going to be bigger. So that's just the nature of the volume of data that goes into the trace matrix. The one thing I can think about is segment your scope of a trace matrix. So don't show all your user stories against the appropriate test cases in one trace matrix, but break it up into multiple based on different modules or subsystems you may have. So segment it so you get smaller, more manageable chunks. But otherwise, if you want to see a report with 5,000, 500, 1,000 work items, it's going to be a big trace matrix. And the other thing you can do in the horizontal one is you can minimize the number of columns you're showing. So in this case, you can see this scrolls for a while. And partly the problem is I'm showing a lot of columns. So if you minimize the columns, then it shrinks the size of the content.
And of course, you can also export it to Excel and work with it in Excel and some of the controls that Microsoft provides there.
Yeah, but even there, the problem still remains. If you have a 500 by 500 matrix, it's going to be big in Excel as well. But maybe it's slightly easier because you do have some ways of grouping things and so on.
Okay, thank you. Here's an interesting question. How are new requirements imported into the system? Is there automation, intelligence built in, examples being standards, client requirements, internally driven requirements?
Yeah, what you can do is you can actually use Word Import to import your documents. And basically what Word Import does is so if I take a document here, we can take a document, we can apply some rule set to it. Rule set really is the ability to identify what information in a document will belong to what section. And then you can import it. And when you import it, it'll go create all the work items for you, link it, and then create a smart doc based on it. So the whole idea being that when you're creating when you want to import a smart doc, there's a rule set designer which actually specifies how things should be processed from a document. And so you can configure your own rule set file to import different types of artifacts. Of course, the more consistent your formats are, you can then use the same template over and over again in terms of the rule set to import your data. But there is a way to bring in Word documents as well as be able to define your own mapping as to how to ingest your document as work items in Azure DevOps and then as a smart doc into modern requirements.
And there are a couple of other aspects to that question. Standards, for example. We have built in many standards into the FAQ module, like safety, risk, and various other ISO standards, and created many questions associated with that standard with the intent of having you create a specification around the standard by answering those questions. So the FAQ scopes it, then you answer them, and then you have a standard, and you can reuse that standard in many other projects. Simply put it in a library and reuse it. The same for internally driven requirements. If you have, examples of internally driven requirements would be security or risk. You can create specifications and reuse them from project to project. The next question is, if you have external stakeholders when reviewing, do they need to have access to Azure DevOps?
So external users do need to have access to Azure DevOps because the review is an authenticated feedback. So we need to make sure that these people have access to the information, and when they provide feedback or approval, we need to make sure that they are the ones providing the approval. So authentication and rights and security is paramount. Obviously, you can give them limited access to your projects or teams or sub-projects within an ADO project, but they do not require a paid license. They can use the Azure DevOps stakeholder license and the model requirements stakeholder license to do the review.
Thank you. The next question has to do with diagrams and Visio, and the question is it possible to import Visio objects into modern requirements to allow business object manipulation? So
no, you cannot import a Visio diagram. What you can do, so the two choices you have is, of course, you can do diagramming directly within modern requirements. So whether you're doing activity diagram, you're doing swim lane diagram, you're doing sequence diagram, you can do all kinds of diagrams directly in modern requirements, or you can use Smart Visio, which is an extension to Visio itself, and everything I showed you today in the demo of a diagram, you can do directly from within Visio using Smart Visio extension.
Thank you. The next question is it possible to get the audit approval report with details of the user story, as presently it just shows which feature has been approved, but without the details of the user stories?
Yeah, so today there are two different reports. One is the document itself, and one is the audit report. Those are two complementary reports. They're not put together under one umbrella. We do have plans on providing a way to merge the two things and produce a single artifact with the detailed requirements and the approval in a single document.
Okay, thank you. So there continues to be questions around the review and some particular aspects of the review, but maybe as suggested, we will have a separate webinar on the review process specifically, because there seems to be a lot of interest there. I value people's time, and we have passed the top of the hour. We've answered all the questions that have come in so far. I'll give you a moment or two to ask any other questions that you have, and then we'll summarize.
Yeah, so the one thing I will say about the review management, if you do have questions, please reach out to us. Easiest way to do is to reach out to either you have an account manager assigned to you, then reach out to that person, or write to support@modernrequirements.com. And then you don't have to wait for the next webinar, and somebody will help you right away.
Interesting question. Do you have any bug reporting system for modern requirements? I want to report, find a bug or user experience problem. And yes, we are going to be sending out a document describing how to access our online support portal. We do have one, and each of our clients is given an account in that online support portal where you can log issues or enhancement requests and watch the progress of those as they move along. It's available on our website under help and support, and we will be sending a step-by-step document hopefully within the next week or so to our client base to make that very clear as to how to access that. So again, that's the end of the questions. I want to thank you all for your time today and the interaction. It's really nice to see when people are asking detailed questions that they understand the nuances of the tool, and we appreciate that. We will be continuing this series, and we will have a webinar specifically talking about migrating content from legacy systems into Azure DevOps, particularly focusing on doors in early April. So the person who asked that question, be on the watch for that webinar because we are going to be announcing it shortly. So again, thank you very much on behalf of our team and on behalf of Microsoft. We really do appreciate your interest, and we do really appreciate all of our clients. I wish you a great rest of your day, and we hope to speak again soon. Bye for now.